Good evening, and welcome to the Cabinet of Fever Dreams. Tonight's a tale of children, factories, and unknown. The Unknown Saga was originally released March of 2024 and is read to you tonight by me, Mike J. Langer, with musical backing by The Dark Side of Music. If you want to help this video spread its wings through the dark skies of the YouTube algorithm, please comment unknown and smash that like button. Also, if you'd like for our digital paths to cross again, feel free to hit that subscribe button and make the notification bell chime. With all that out of the way, plug your headphones in and clear your schedule. It's going to be a wild weekend. It was all meant to be a fun Children's Day. All I wanted was to make the kids smile. All I wanted was to organize an event that would celebrate their imagination in bright colors and laughter. All I wanted was to do good. Yet I hear no laughter now. Joy has fled from my corner of the world. All I hear are my own tortured sobs. For my dreams have been crushed. Children's Sci-Fi Saturday is doomed to fail. And it will fail because of me. It will fail because I didn't account for the element of the unknown. The old factory was a perfect canvas for my Imaginarium. Sitting on the outskirts of the city, it has always been a prominent feature of the local skyline. Abandoned and decrepit, it was the first thing you would see when arriving by train. Most called the factory an eyesore, but where others saw discomforting brutalism, I saw promise. During the First Republic, the factory was used for making soap. After the war, when the Bolsheviks took over, it was used for financial fraud. After Revolution, when everything was privatized, it was used for financial fraud once more, just less brazenly so. I had spent much of my early youth gazing out of train windows watching the old factory, letting my imagination go wild with the possibility of what it contained. It wasn't until the early 2000s that I finally managed to enter the cement monolith. My body was sleek with sweat and my jaw was exhausted with chemical stimulation. It was the early 2000s and a techno music craze was at its peak. The concrete of the factory floor was illuminated by bright neon and heated with masses of writhing flesh. In the depths of ecstasy and the peaks of my youth, I finally entered the temple of mystery. The pulsing echoes of the music did not leave my eardrums until the following afternoon. The memories of that drug-fueled night stayed with me for years. 2 decades later, I found myself gazing out of the train window once more. The idea must have been always with me, for it came to me whole with dizzying swiftness. All it needed was the years to ferment. 2 decades later, I looked at the old soap factory and thought, this would be a fantastic place for a Children's Day event. It did not take long for a theme to emerge. The colors of my wild youth had burned themselves into the innards of that empty building. Before I could phrase my thoughts into words, I knew that the event would be one rooted in the bright hue of neon. In a world where the future seems bleak, I found it important, necessary even, to paint a brighter version. Children's Sci-Fi Saturday is what I wrote on a napkin as the plan cascaded through my mind. Within 3 days, I had secured a tour through the premises. Within a week, I had obtained a lease agreement and set a date for the event. I did not hesitate in who would provide the dashes of color that would illuminate the special day. Karel Neznam, a childhood friend, a man who I often considered a brother to me. After graduation, he moved to the capital and worked as a lighting specialist, focusing specifically on children's events. Even though the two of us had not shared words for years, he accepted my offer without hesitation. The match seemed destined. The two of us working together would be unstoppable. I was certain Children's Sci-Fi Saturday could not fail. As promising as our partnership seemed, Carl's schedule was problematic. He was helping conduct a light festival in the capital and would be unavailable to view the factory until a week before the event. This was undoubtedly an obstacle to organizing and promoting Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, but Carl was quick to dismiss my worries. His team worked efficiently and had all the necessary resources at their disposal. If I required images for promoting material, I could simply utilize artificial intelligence to generate them. Carl assured me that whatever the computer presented to the parents could be easily replicated. I took Carl at his word and followed his advice. With help from photographs I had taken during my initial tour of the factory, I generated magnificent images of promise. The main floor of the factory would be transformed into a dazzling spaceship interior where children could contemplate the magic of interstellar travel. The loading bays would morph into a colorful mess hall where they would eat futuristic food disguised as jelly beans. The storage facilities would be illuminated by giant, friendly aliens that could be programmed to talk to their children and instill a deep sense of wonder and excitement about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. The old smokestacks of the factory that had lain dormant for nearly a century would transform into giant rockets that would lift off towards the skies. The artificial intelligence generated truly inspiring images. Carl assured me that each of the pictures could easily be brought into reality in the allotted time. Relying on his confidence, I made the event official and started to sell tickets. I had never marketed an event online, so I went through the process without any expectations. Would have been happy if we sold enough tickets to break even. What I found waiting for me on the phone in the morning took my breath away. I was not the only one who saw potential in the old factory. Within 24 hours, we had sold more tickets than a cement structure could conceivably hold. I quickly started to organize the visitors into shifts and even opened up a second Sunday slot. The second event sold out just as quickly as the first. Both me and Karel were beyond ecstatic. It had been a rough year for me financially, so the ticket money was more than welcome. Most of all, though, I was proud to bring that old factory to life. I was excited to bring joy into the lives of the local children. Everything seemed so perfect. And then, a week before the sold-out event was meant to take place, it all fell apart in the most terrible of ways. Carol's train for the capital didn't come until late, so when we met, it was already past sundown. Were he to arrive a week earlier, the warehouse would have been pitch dark. It wasn't until that morning that the factory's electrical supply had been resurrected in preparation for Carl's visit. Getting the fluorescents in the old building to shine again had been no bargain, but Carl's reaction made the bill worth it. "This is perfect," he beamed. "We can transform this entire space. We can make it a regular event. Children's Sci-Fi Weekend. Think of the money." And I did think of the money. As I said, it was a rough year for me financially. I did think of the money, but most of all, I thought of the children. I thought of all the joy and wonder that Children's Sci-Fi Saturday and Children's Sci-Fi Sunday would bring to the community. Most of all, I thought about how I was doing something good. As we moved through the entryway of the building, Carl regaled me with his plans. When we reached the factory floor, his passion nearly broke into song. For half an hour, he walked me through how the barren industrial architecture around us would be transformed into a magnificent spaceship. I was a most rapturous audience. Carol was happy talking me through his process, yet as his magnificent plan came to an end, he told me he needed some time on his own. There were measurements for him to take, technical issues to contend with that were beyond my scope of knowledge. He excused himself for a solitary walk through the factory, and I happily obliged him. I wandered around the main hall. I was walking through a structure of cold cement and rusted metal, but I was elsewhere entirely. With one foot, I walked through soothing memories of an untamed youth. With the other, I moved through Carl's vision manifested. I imagined how the cement walls would be swallowed by light, how wondrous the visions of space travel would be, how the old factory would be brought to life once more. In the depths of my heart, I could already hear the laughter and joy. My daydreams came to a sudden halt when I heard my name called. Carl sounded uneasy. He wanted me to join him right away. I'd known Carl for years, and I had never seen him scared. He was always loud and boisterous and faced all danger with his fist raised. The man I met in the loading dock had his shoulder slumped. His hands were clawed into the sides of his jacket in sheer discomfort. Did you put this here?" he stuttered. A mirror propped up against the wall. It was one of those funhouse mirrors you would find in a circus or a maze. It obscured my reflection, yet did not do so in any zany or comical fashion. I did not look taller or wider or like a silly gnome. My face was being pulled apart in directions that gave my appearance a monstrous quality. I looked like some horrid ogre. I was about to tell Carl that I had no idea where the mirror had come from, but the words got stuck in my throat. Past the monstrous form that my reflection painted on the mirror, there was something more disturbing. Behind me, smudged by the ghastly bends of the image, I could see movement. There was no one in the loading dock with us. In the mirror, above my monstrous head, something was clearly moving. But when I turned and looked, all I could see were the shuttered doors of an empty loading dock. Each time I turned to look behind me, the fluorescent lights flickered. It was as if the universe itself didn't approve of my investigation. I was being warned. It was while I had my back turned that Carl started to scream. When I followed his gaze to see what had alarmed him, I too couldn't suppress my horror. Someone or something had been hiding behind the mirror. It wore a long black robe and a mask of shined metal. Even though the outlines of its tattered gown seemed to suggest human limbs, the creature moved on all fours with the tempo of a cautious spider. With its masked face betraying no emotion, the thing crawled towards Karel. His fists clawed deeper into his jacket. The man was paralyzed with fear, as was I. The figure that shared the loading dock with us defied all explanation. Suddenly, the robed creature braced. As if it were a cat stretching in the sun, the being flexed its long, dark limbs. When the figure pulled its body forward, its neck continued to travel. Like a malformed giraffe, the masked face traveled towards Carl's terrified form. Carl's lips trembled. In a barely audible wheeze, he named the creature before him. The unknown, he said. The moment the words left Carl's lips, a horrid inhuman hiss rose from behind the beast's mask. The being's long neck retracted into its body as if it were a vacuum extension cord. The moment the creature leaped at Carl, I ran. As I escaped, I spared a single panicked glance towards my friend. He was still standing upright with his fingers dug into the sides of his jacket. The robed figure had straddled him and had its masked head pressed against the side of his face. My friend looked to be trapped by the creature, but I ran regardless. I have never been a brave man. It was always Karel who approached threats with a sense of resistance. When I burst out of the doors of the factory, I immediately took my phone to call the authorities. I started to shriek about how my friend had been assailed by some terrifying beast of nightmare, yet after a couple frantic sentences with dispatch, Karel emerged from the factory himself. His body was unscathed, but he was in deep shock. When I questioned him about what had happened, he struggled to articulate a response. Only after I grasped him by the shoulders and shook him did Karel manage to speak. It whispered, he said, his voice drenched in a shiver that made gooseflesh crawl up my own spine. The unknown whispered horrors into my ear. When I asked Karel what exactly the creature had told him, he turned catatonic once more. It wasn't until I announced that the police were on their way that he snapped out of his shock. He did not want to be interviewed by the authorities. He refused to speak further of the unknown. Karel had also decided that he would not spend the night in my place, as we had previously agreed. He would sleep at his parents' house, and there was no convincing him otherwise. Before the flashing lights of the authorities arrived at the old factory, Karel had disappeared into the night. The entire experience with the robed figure had left me shaken, but the true discomfort of the situation didn't dawn upon me until the police had arrived. I, naturally, had no interest in entering the factory and was horrified by the idea of a lone patrol being sent in to investigate. The two grizzled officers were dismissive of my warnings. When I told them that a horror beyond comprehension lured within the loading dock of the factory, they simply pointed at their guns and smiled. They were safe, they said. The police were quietly dismissive of my warnings when they first arrived. When they walked out of the factory 20 minutes later, their disbelief morphed into good cheer. There was nothing there, they said. The warehouse was empty. If my story about the robed figure wasn't so entertaining, they claimed, I would have been subject to a fine of misuse of emergency services. My insistence that there was indeed a demon holding a mirror in the factory produced laughter at first. Yet when I swore that I was not joking, the older of the officers shed a smile. He, once again, repeated the height of the fine for misuse of emergency services. He then, sternly, told me that the Messianic Psychiatric Institute wasn't too far away. If I insisted there was a demon inside of the factory, I would not only be subject to the aforementioned fine, the officers would also arrange accommodation for me in the hospital. I did not argue with the police. The fine was entirely out of my budget, and I could not afford to be committed to a psychiatric institute. Instead, I went back to my empty home and desperately hoped to wake up in a world where the entire affair was a horrid dream. I spent much of the night worried about my sanity, yet when the morning came, I was struck with another, more palpable anxiety. Karel wrote me an email. He had left with the first morning train back to the capital. He would not be able to help me in putting together Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, or Children's Sci-Fi Sunday for that matter. Karel knew organizing the event must have been expensive, but to him, the horrors which hide within the factory surpassed all possible financial strain. He insisted I cancel the event, for both my sake and the sake of the children. I wrote back to him many times. I have called and I have texted and I have even journeyed to the capital to ring on his doorbell. Karel has not returned any of my attempts at communication. As his email stated, he would not reconsider. I keep hoping that maybe he will change his mind, that maybe he will realize that this event going awry will destroy both my standing in the community and with the bank. I dive for my phone whenever I hear the chime of an email notification, yet my hopes are always dashed by that little screen. Karel has not reached out. Instead, my inbox is filled with excited parents asking about details of the event. Some are coming from the other side of the country just to see the sci-fi wonderland I have sold them. Refunds are out of the question, for I have spent much of the money already. The cancellation is unthinkable. I sit here, a man on the edge, less than 24 hours before the first children are meant to arrive at the factory. I have tried to bring my promises to life without Karel's help. I have sourced decorations from a defunct movie studio and hired local teenagers and spent what little money I had on internet freelancers. I have done my best. But my best is not enough. The event will still be an unmitigated disaster. Soon, the children and their parents will come. They will come and there will be hell to pay. It was meant to be a fun children's day. It was meant to be an afternoon filled with delight and imagination and joy. I had it all planned out. I considered everything that could go wrong and tried to account for it. I have considered everything except for the factor of the unknown. We'll return to our regularly scheduled programming after a brief thank you to the sponsors of this madness, the patrons. Huge thanks to Bob Conder, Dante Kincaid, Joyce, Matt, Mr. Creepypasta, Paul Evans, and Shion for supporting the Cabinet of Fever Dreams. If you'd like to join these illustrious patrons of the Bohemian Arts, drop by patreon.com/MikeJLanger. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming, the second chapter of the Unknown Saga. The situation has not improved. I am dressed as an astronaut and expect the day to go terribly. The decoration looked pitiful when I set them up the night prior. The harsh morning light does them no favors. No magical transformation has taken place. The abandoned factory still looks like an abandoned factory. To enter the grounds of Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, one has to walk through a decontamination tunnel. I had hoped that the mysterious passage would make the factory seem more futuristic, but all it manages to do is bring back memories of the early pandemic. The overpowering stench of disinfectant doesn't do the atmosphere any favors either. In the first chamber of the event sits a grouping of chairs and a mostly clean canvas screen that documentaries about space travel are being projected on. I've taken great care in organizing the YouTube playlist to be as educational as possible, but the children are utterly disinterested. They're not filled with wonder and joy. They're confused. Some throw tantrums, some openly weep. The parents that arrived early are trying to put on a positive front, but I know it won't last. When Heavyset Mother starts to loudly inquire about who she has to speak to for a refund and an explanation, I dug into another of the decontamination tunnels and moved deeper into a poorly constructed spaceship. The second chamber of the event holds the futuristic kitchen. The table is pitiful. In between a bunch of sci-fi props I've salvaged from a defunct movie studio sit 2 bowls with the most futuristic food I could afford. Jelly beans and saltine crackers. Though the food and decor of the chamber are miserable, the kitchen is staffed by my one stroke of good luck, Catherine. She might be underage and I might be breaking various laws by having her interact with the children, but what she lacks in qualifications, she makes up for with sheer excitement. She even brought her own costume. Although obviously homemade, she looks like she crawled straight out of the Jetsons and has the energy of a cartoon character to prove it. When she sees me, she waves and smiles and tells me everything is going great. After the initial burst of pep, however, Catherine asks if I'm going to bring more food. The kids are much hungrier than anticipated and she's getting a bit peckish herself. It's not even an hour in and half the jelly beans are gone. I tell her everything is going to be arranged, even though I know it won't be. She nods and hops over to serve 2 10-year-olds some crackers. They look miserable. I can't hear her past the helmet, but she says something to the kids, and suddenly they're all smiles. The woman who was requesting the refund emerges from the disinfection tunnel. She yells out into the ether about robbery and fraud and demands to be shown who's in charge. I know I'll have to face her eventually, but I can't bear to do so yet. I dug into the passageway leading to the final chamber of the event. The loading bay is lit by discount screens I ordered online. On each of the screens stands a cartoon alien. Their voices are clearly artificial and they speak over each other, but with a bit of imagination, they almost seem sentient. Animated avatars powered by artificial intelligence. It's all Greek to me, but a stranger online put them together for a reasonable price. The avatars are stilted, even a bit frightening, but the children seem genuinely excited to be talking to them. The man I hired to look after this chamber of the event is considerably less enthused. He emerges from the shadows, his face painted green and holding little joy. The man looks rough, dangerous even, but he's the only one who responded to my online ad. The moment he sees me, he starts asking would I filled out the paperwork he asked for. I don't know what he's talking about, but it doesn't look amicable to questions. I tell him it's almost filled out, hoping that he'll eventually forget. Another thing, he says, picking at his paint-covered beard in frustration. One of the aliens is busted. He doesn't point at the screen. Instead, he flicks whatever detritus he gathered from his jaw in the general direction of the malfunction. The alien on the screen is, indeed, busted. The creature's eyes are wide open in an expression of a grand mal seizure, and his speech consists solely of strained vowels. The child stares up at the creature with terrified wonder. He listens, trying to decipher the extraterrestrial's message, but when he notices we're watching him, he turns to us. "Why is he talking like that?" the boy asks. "Alien language," I say, feeling the nervous heat rise in my spacesuit. "Try talking to a different alien." The child doesn't question this. He simply shrugs and moves on to a screen with a healthy-looking alien. I tell the man with the green face that he should dissuade the kids from talking to the broken screen, and he, in turn, starts asking about the paperwork again. Apparently, the state needs evidence that he was hired for the job. I vaguely recall a stack of blank documents sitting in the factory office and tell him, again, that they're almost filled out. When he, rather aggressively, demands that I give him the papers immediately, I excuse myself. I am, after all, meant to be keeping watch over the space documentaries. When I emerge out of the disinfection tunnel into the first chamber of the event, I am met with 2 unpleasant surprises. The playlist of space documentaries I have set up has been remixed by the YouTube algorithm to include flat earth videos. Before I manage to rectify the program, I'm confronted by a second, shriller surprise. She nearly tears my spacesuit when she grabs me. The woman who was so loudly proclaiming her appetite for a refund has singled me out. Dangling her weeping 5-year-old daughter like a prop, she demands to speak to someone who could give her back her hard-earned money. The visor of my space helmet obscures my face, but the fear in my voice comes through loud and clear. I tell the woman that if she wants to get a refund, she should contact the organizer of the event. When she demands a phone number, I panic and give her the right one. She calls immediately. Even past the confines of my astronaut costume, she can hear my phone ring. The moment she identifies me as the organizer of Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, her already loud voice reaches a volume that makes all the children weep with renewed fervor. Her points and jabs catch the attention of other parents. They aren't happy either. The mob shifts from displeasure to absolute rage in a matter of seconds. At first, I make an attempt to negotiate, yet the louder the crowd gets, the more they start to push and shove. I have a helmet on, but the fear of a broken jaw is palpable. As the crowd gets rowdier and more aggressive, I push my way past a bunch of styrofoam decorations and hide in a factory's office space. I'd hoped that my retreat would dissuade the crowd, but it doesn't. Not even shuttering the windows calms them. They keep knocking on the door. They're all demanding to speak to me. With each knock, their demands grow louder and angrier. When I set up the decorations the night prior, the thought occurred to me that at some point of Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, the police might be called. I just never thought that I would be the one to call them. Just as I fear someone might break the window, the officers arrive. They part the mob of parents and deliver their own knock and request. I let them in and immediately shut the door. I recognize them the moment they enter. It isn't until I take off my helmet that they recognize me. It's the same two patrolmen who showed up the night me and Karel had met the unknown. They laugh at the sight of me. When I explain my predicament, they laugh some more. Halfway through my story, someone starts banging on the door demanding to know what is happening. The younger cop finds this to be very funny, but the other one, the same one who so sternly warned me about being taken to a psychiatric institution on that fateful night, takes great offense to the interruption. He bursts out the door and roars at the crowd to calm down and not interrupt police procedure. Refunds are civil matters. If they want one, they should call a lawyer. Then, with a satisfied smile, the policeman returns to the office. He bids me to continue my story. The police find Karel bailing on the event and ensuring chaos to be very funny. But when I tell them that I am scared of the mob outside, they turn thoughtful. The crowd is thinning, but they both admit that I am not exactly safe. Finally, the cop who couldn't stop laughing during my story asks me if anyone's seen me without the spacesuit. If people didn't know I organized the event, they might not try to punch me in the face. When I tell the officer that none of the parents outside actually know what I look like, he slaps his knee in victory. He declares the problem solved. I should just take off the spacesuit and keep an eye on the event as a civilian. My clothes are drenched in sweat from the spacesuit and the stress, but aside from the wet splotches around my neck and armpits, I look like a regular middle-aged man. Being a lone, sweaty adult at a children's day makes me uncomfortable, but I prefer it to the alternative. The stern policeman stands outside the door and keeps watch. When the coast is clear, he wraps his knuckles on the door. I emerge from behind the styrofoam decorations not as the organizer of Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, but as another unhappy adult. I thank the patrolmen for their help, but in response they just shake their heads and smile. "Oh, we're staying here, just to keep an eye on things," the one that likes to laugh says. "There's a good chance someone will assault you," the stern one says. I heed their warnings and proceed with caution. I do my best to keep a low profile. In the first chamber of the event, a handful of children are watching the projector with interest. It's not a space documentary, or even a flat earth video. It's a scream-filled treatise on Bill Gates' secret microchip factory on the moon. The children look disappointed when I switch the video over to a soft-spoken documentary about space travel, but eventually the screen catches their attention with rocket ships. Seeing me at the laptop, a parent comes up to me. He asks me if I know who's in charge of the event. I shrug and say I got the gig from an online listing. The father throws up his hands in frustration, but he does not strike me. He just mumbles, "Unbelievable," grabs his son, and leaves the premises. I find some confidence in my anonymity. That confidence disappears the moment I enter the second chamber. Weeping children roam around like butterflies in a summer meadow. All the bowls in the futuristic kitchen are empty. Even though Catherine is still smiling, there's lines of mascara running down her face. Most furious of all, and terribly frightening under the bright light of the fluorescents, is the green-painted man. "I'm not going back there, man," he yells, grabbing me by my shirt. There's legitimate fear in the man's eyes, but it quickly turns to anger. "Whatever the hell that thing is, it's not right. If I wasn't on parole, I would have gotten out of here already. Just get me my work papers, goddammit." The other parents watch us with suspicion. They start to piece together why I could be getting yelled at by the staff. Before the mob can assemble again, I free myself of the green man's grasp and duck into the third chamber of the factory. He screams about how he's not going back to jail because of me, but the green-painted man doesn't make chase. I walk through the disinfection chamber alone. I emerge into a loading dock of flickering screens. Some are completely dead, some are blue with Windows errors, and some are filled with jittering alien avatars. All of them howl with strange monosyllabic ululations of a broken intelligence. Yet all the alien avatars malfunctioning is not what strikes true horror into my heart. What truly frightens me is the mirror at the far end of the loading dock. Even in the poor light, I can see my reflection. I'm once again made into a terrible ogre of nightmare. Behind me, as before, something gets closer and closer. When I look over my shoulder, the screens flicker with strain. The thing emerges on all fours. It moves its limbs with caution, yet its neck is eagerly extended. Even past the ululations of the broken aliens, I can hear it hiss. From across the loading dock, I witness the unknown once more. Drunk on fear, my mind produces a terrible theory. On that fateful night, the unknown fled before the police entered the loading dock. It fled. With my mind diminished, I formed the idea that the creature is easily startled. As if I was dealing with a deer in my backyard, I make myself large and dash towards it. Yet the thing I am trying to fluster is not a deer. It is horror personified. The closer I move towards the abomination, the starker that reality becomes. My hands fall to my sides and my fingers dig into my palms. My footsteps slow until my feet refuse to move. I stand before the unknown, just as Carol did, paralyzed with fear. The thing slowly raises itself to its hind limbs and braces against my shoulders. Though its appendages are shaped like arms, the fingers are not. They are terrible hooked claws that dig deep into the fabric of my shirt. The thing lifts itself and wraps another set of claws around my knees. The creature is considerably light, yet its weight on my mind is unbearable. From behind its metal mask, the thing whispers to me. Its rasping voice is that of many mouths. I comprehend each and every inhuman word that is forced into my ear. The message of the unknown bounces through me, jagged and painful, and my eyes fill with tears. The thing speaks, and I comprehend. Yet when it lets go of me, all the truths dissipate from my mind. Like the fading memory of a bad dream, I forget the specifics of what the thing whispered. The terrible message leaves my mind, but the fear and dread do not. The unknown does not flee after it's done with me. It crawls its way back to the horrible mirror and watches me. Its masked face cocks to the side in curiosity. I do not entertain the creature's gaze long. The moment my limbs are remotely under my control, I turn and I run. As I escape the horrid monstrosity, I try to call to the outside world for help, but my voice is a hoarse whisper. When I smash through the disinfection tunnel, my feet can no longer hold me. Crawling, Like a weeping infant, I make my way into the kitchen of the future. The police are in a heated debate with the man with the painted face, but I interrupted with my wails. Tugging at their pant leg, I beg them to enter the third chamber. I demand they witness the horrid monster and destroy it. The police seem eager to investigate, but my entrance makes a scene. Quickly, I am identified as the organizer of Children's Sci-Fi Saturday. The parents mob me and order I explain myself. They shout and demand refunds and call me a thief. In their eyes, I can see a thirst for blood. I try to stand up on my own, but instead I am lifted off my feet by an angry, balding man. Based off my terror-stricken eyes and sweaty form, he announces that I am on drugs. With each stuttered denial, his accusations grow more certain. I try to explain myself and apologize, yet my words just enrage the crowd further. I am pulled from side to side, nearly being torn asunder. Then finally, with a blunt force to the back of my head, I am expelled from the realm of the conscious. I wake in the back of a police cruiser. The officers sit in front, drinking coffee and eating sandwiches. The event is cancelled, they inform me. The unhappy parents had gathered into a mob and became a public safety hazard. Everyone was dispersed and I was safe. But they weren't able to figure out who had knocked me out. "You'll just have to live with the mystery," the stern one says. "At least you survived." "Definitely getting sued though," the one with the good humor chuckles. As they drive me home, I go through the missed calls on my cell phone. I think of calling back Catherine, perhaps calming down the green-painted felon, but my mind quickly shifts to other things. I notice something is off when I see myself in a dashboard mirror. The mass of bruised flesh on the right side of my head makes for an uncomfortable sight, but there's something else that's wrong in the reflection. It isn't until I get a proper look at myself in my bathroom mirror that I realize what had started to unsettle me in the back of the cruiser. Behind me, ever so gently, I see movement. When I turn around, I'm alone. Yet in my reflection, there is something unsettling. Something I can't quite focus my eyes on is moving behind me. It's moving, and with every passing second, it gets closer. I don't call any of the people I hired for Children's Sci-Fi Saturday. I don't call any of the parents or answer any of the furious emails. There's only one person I have interest in talking to. The only other person who has heard the terrible whispers of the unknown. I call Karel. I call him over and over and over again. I call Karel, and he does not pick up.
Hey Mike,
I hear you screech from behind your computer screen.
I sure like your stories, but I loathe audiobooks with every fiber of my being. Is there, possibly, a physical collection of your tales that I could order off of Amazon.com?
Why, thank you, hypothetical listener, for your clearly telegraphed question. Yes, there is. Although all of my stories are available to be read online for free, there's also a print version out there. Cabinet of Fever Dreams Volume 1 can be purchased in both paperback form and ebook versions at the Jeff Bezos Amazon Emporium. Links down in the description of the video. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming, the third chapter of the Unknown Saga.
The man on the television looks like Sigmund Freud. He might be one of his descendants, but more likely, he is merely cosplaying.
From a psychological standpoint,
He says, lending a gravitas to his words wholly incompatible with a morning talk show.
the disappointment these children felt will likely linger with them for the rest of their lives. They were promised spaceships and wonder, and what they got instead...
The man doesn't finish off his thoughts. He simply shrugs his shoulders. This elicits a laugh from both the other guests of the program and the moderator.
Yes, the psychological implications of this disaster are both fascinating and terrifying. That's why we brought you on today, Doctor.
Unlike the psychologist, the moderator of the show speaks in rapid-fire bursts designed to fit a time slot. She racks her notes with mechanical precision and clicks her pen in the direction of the studio screen.
On the note of psychological effects, there's a particular aspect of Children's Sci-Fi Saturday that has garnered a lot of interest on social media. Can we pull up the clip?
The still image that flashes up on the screen turns my blood cold. The psychologist starts to gather his thoughts in response, yet before he speaks, he's cut off by the other guest of the program.
With all due respect, as the national representative of event organizers, I have to say something.
Unlike the other two people in the studio, the man does not wear a suit. With his jeans and t-shirt and bright smile, he seems like relaxation personified, yet there's a palpable annoyance in his voice.
I think most people are entirely too focused on the poor choice of costume. Wearing that to a children's party is clearly inappropriate. This fascination with the creature though, my goodness, can we leave it be? The headline should be, Children's Sci-Fi Saturday was a terribly organized event. Not, look at the scary costume that terrified children.
Past the relaxed man's protest, the clip starts to play. That thing, that creature, that terrible masked specter who haunts my dreams and is responsible for the horror that is my waking life, it crawls up to a child and provokes an endless stream of tears.
The creature with the mirror has provoked much speculation online. Some, as you, have deemed it to be a terrible idea of a costume, but there's a growing group of voices online that claim it to be a curse,
he says, interrupting the moderator. The corners of his mouth are still raised, but his eyes have shed all trace of a smile.
A curse, yes, I've read the comments myself. To those that claim the unknown is some sort of a running curse for event organizers, I have but one question. What century are you living in? The 15th or the 16th? Get real. There's no such thing as curses. That's just a man, or a woman, in a poorly chosen costume. We should leave it at that. The unknown? So the thing has a name?
The moderator asks, as additional clips of the masked creature scaring children play on the screen. The last remnant of the guest's smile of a simile fall away. He scowls at her as if she bumped into him in the subway.
It doesn't. It's just a costume. There's no curse or legend to it,
he barks.
I only called it the unknown because that's what the keyboard warriors are calling it.
The tense moment at the studio lingers, but it doesn't last. Soon enough, the Freud impersonator starts to deliver a lecture about the abstract nature of the unknown and how humans are inherently scared of things without faces. The endless collection of cell phone footage flashes on the screen behind the psychologist. I turn off the TV and try to distract myself with thoughts unrelated to my predicament. I try to distract myself, but I can't. I can't stop thinking about the unknown. When I open my laptop, I'm assailed by a mountain of email complaints, death threats, and genital pictures from outraged strangers on the internet. Their ire makes me sick with fear and guilt, but I don't dwell on it. Instead, I open up Google and start to research the topic that the man on the television demanded be avoided. I start to tug away at the string of conspiracy the fake smiling man insisted didn't exist. After an hour of browsing through deep web forums, I start to feel sane. After 2 hours, I realize I am not the first to have been afflicted by the curse of the unknown. Before the third hour of research is done, I've purchased a train ticket to the capital. I arrive at Carl's apartment in the late afternoon. I do not ring the doorbell this time. Instead, I wait for a dog walker to let me into the complex. I do not wait long. Within half an hour, I am standing at the door to Carl's unit. Again, I avoid the doorbell. Instead, I knock. "Food delivery," I announce in a voice as far from mine as I can muster. I hear someone move on the other side of the door, but it isn't until I knock again that Carl responds. "I didn't order any food," my friend mumbles from behind the door. "It's me," I say. The movement on the other side of the door stops. "I know about the unknown," I add, hoping that it'll sway Carl. It does. It takes almost a minute, but once the silence lingers and I make it clear I am not retreating home, Carl opens up the door. I did lie about being a food delivery man, but I did bring food and drinks. 2 Chipotle cheeseburgers from Pavel's Bistro and a 6-pack of microbrew. To ease his mind, to make him more likely to talk, or, perhaps, listen. I come to Carl's apartment, bearing gifts for an old friend, hoping to remind him of our university years, yet the moment the door opens, the burgers and beer seem like a terrible joke. The Carl I know is gone. The man who stands before me is a mere shadow of the artist I had toured the factory with not 2 weeks ago. His eyes are sunk and suspicious, and his face bears no trace of friendship. "Why are you here?" he asks through a crack in the door. "The unknown," I say. "It's following me too." His expression doesn't change the slightest bit, but after a moment, a long moment, he opens the door just a little wider so that I can enter. All the blinds of the apartment are pulled. The few rays of light that seep into the room bounce off of fragments of broken glass. As I walk, the carpet crunches under my feet. The once modern apartment looks like a cave of a madman, and, in a way, it is. Carl seems to hold no appetite for the burgers I bought, but the beer he accepts. In one swift motion, he flicks off the bottle cap with a lighter and drains half the drink. I only manage a couple sips from my own bottle. The rumbling train ride quickly catches up with my bladder. "Don't worry," Carl says, tipping his beer in the direction of the bathroom. "I broke the mirror. It's safe." The mirror in the bathroom is indeed broken, yet I face away from it regardless. The few fragments of it that hang above the sink still cast a reflection. I don't want to risk seeing myself. I don't want to risk seeing the thing that is following me. By the time I'm back in the living room, Carl has already finished his first beer. I try to avoid the topic of that incomprehensible monster. I try to have a casual chat with my friend before we are forced to discuss the unavoidable. Yet Carl is deaf to all my attempts at small talk. "It's not a legend or an urban myth," Carl finally says, dislodging another bottle cap with his lighter. "I wish it was. Oh, what I would give for the unknown to just be an old wives' tale. But it's not. The unknown is real, and it has us both within its grasp." I struggle to formulate my question, but a couple sips of the microbrew loosen my tongue. "What is the unknown?" I ask. Carl shrugs. "No one knows. No one knows where it came from or how long it's been around. There are written records going back centuries. Some even say the unknown has been around for longer than humans have organized celebrations. No one really knows. No one knows the rules or the mechanics under which the creature operates. It just appears. All that is certain is that the thing will end any event planner's career and life." "Life?" I ask. Carl's tired eyes raise to meet mine. "You've been seeing the reflection too, haven't you? After the thing whispers those terrible truths to you, it won't ever leave you. It will always be behind you, getting closer and closer until..." An ambulance passes outside. Carl listens to the blaring siren, nodding his head along as if it were music. It isn't until the wail is blocks away that he speaks again. "That night in the factory, the first time we met the unknown, I was in denial. For years, I heard whispered warnings. 'Look out for the unknown,' the old-timers said. I just thought it was some dumb joke. But then I saw it. I saw it, and it touched me, and it whispered to me, and I still didn't believe any of the warnings. When I got to my parents' place, I went to my old room and stood in front of the mirror. They say not to do that. They say the unknown will get you faster if you look at your own reflection, but denial is a strong thing. I stared at the mirror and watched it get closer and closer. I watched the image in the reflection get clearer and clearer until it became undeniable. I think of the few times I've seen the reflection myself. Those few glimpses in the rear view of the patrol car. That long stare in my bathroom mirror. That unnameable shimmer that I saw behind me made me uncomfortable beyond words. As I think of the being that has been pursuing us, I catch a glimpse of my own reflection in the beer bottle. Behind me, something shimmers. I quickly look away. "Do you remember what it whispered to you?" I ask. No. All I know is that it was bad news. A smile crosses Carl's lips. It's not a smile produced by joy or good tidings. It's the sort of grin only gallows humor produces. There's no understanding the unknown. It's beyond understanding. The words it said made sense in the moment when the thing spoke to our primal brains, but trying to make sense of them in a rational fashion, I think that's beyond us. There's no understanding the thing. All that is certain is that it appears, it follows, and eventually it takes you back to where it came from. Unless it doesn't, I say. What do you mean? Carl asks. We know that once you become a target for the unknown, it shows up to every event you organize, right? Carl, with more than a hint of suspicion, nods his head. So, we know how to get it out into the open, I say. That's a good first step. I tell Carl my plan. The research I have done into the unknown is limited to my frantic morning internet scroll, and much of the success hinges on uncertain presumptions, yet as I speak, Carl listens. His face softens. He even finds his appetite and reaches for the Chipotle cheeseburger I brought him. By the time I finish detailing my theory, the burger is gone. Carl is still pessimistic about our chances, but his spirits have raised. As I start eating my own burger, Carl picks up his phone and starts calling around. He tells his colleagues and associates what we are planning, but he obscures the why. Though some of the people Carl calls connect the dots and ask about whether the event is related to Children's Sci-Fi Saturday, most of them don't. Before the hour passes, we have a roster of people who can transform the old factory into a place of magic and wonder. Once he is done making his phone calls, Carl takes out a piece of paper and writes down all the contact details for his people, just in case something happens to him. I let my friend write down all the names and numbers, but I assure him we'll both make it through this ordeal. I appreciate your optimism, he says, cracking open a third beer. But there's no certainty here. We don't know if we can defeat the unknown. We don't know if it can be defeated. Either way, you have more time than I have. That first night, when I was trying to deny what had happened, I stared into the mirror for hours. I watched it get closer and closer until I could deny it no longer. I'm afraid my days are numbered. The impenetrable cloud of dread I found him in starts to descend on Carl once more. I do not allow it to consume him. To distract my friend, I change the subject of our conversation. I start talking about the misadventures of youth and inquiring about the regular characters of our long-gone escapades. My friend is morose at first, but with a couple well-placed questions, he opens up. As the sun outside sets, we reminisce about the early 2000s and how much the world has changed over the past 2 decades. We drink and we eat, and for a moment, we forget about the unknown altogether. With lights turned on, the flat almost looks the way it did back in our wild days. The occasional shards of broken glass, however, make our present circumstance impossible to ignore. The thing that follows in the reflection, I say, as I drain the final bottle of beer, does it get any clearer? Solemnly, he nods. It's all beyond our comprehension. That's why it's so fuzzy when it's far. Our brain finds it easier to ignore, yet the closer it gets, the clearer the thing becomes. Seeing the darkness return to his face, I tell myself not to ask the question. The details are unimportant for our plan and will only darken the room once more. Consciously, I know the question is a bad idea, yet my lips move regardless. What does it look like? I ask. It's the unknown, but without the mask, Carl says, looking at his empty beer bottle. His fingers strip away at the label as he struggles to make his description. Pale, like a corpse. The thing is pale with a human face, but it has mouths. Many mouths. Many mouths, and... Carl goes silent. His fingers go still. His eyes go wide. His reflection stares back at him from the green glass of the beer bottle. A yelp of a scream, that is all he manages to get out. Carl screams in terror and then, in a horrid sight that defies the laws of physics, he flings backwards into the couch and disappears. The beer bottle comes crashing to the floor. It sprinkles a fresh helping of broken glass over Carl's living room carpet. I am left in the apartment alone. The terror which sweeps through my body is unbearable. I immediately pick up my phone to report what I had witnessed, but it grows numb in my hands. There's no one to call. There's no one to help. Originally, the plan was for me to sleep at Carl's before going out to meet his associates, but being found in an apartment of a man freshly missing would put the entire plan in jeopardy. I do not have time to mourn the disappearance of my friend or try to make sense of it. With sorrow and terror brewing in my heart, I grab the paper with all the contact information for Carl's associates and flee to the train station. I spend the ride back home drenched in a terrified sweat. The sight of my childhood friend being plucked out of reality refuses to leave my mind's eye and keeps repeating over and over regardless of how much I try to distract myself. Every reflective surface, from the mirrors to the windows to the cup of coffee I am served on the train, taunts me with a similar fate. Worst of all, however, is the fact that I have lost my one true ally. Carol's contacts could help me lure the unknown back to the factory, but there is no way that I can destroy it on my own. The moment I find my seat, I lay my head on the table and stare at my feet. The prospect of catching a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the mirror is far too terrifying. Two men sit in the seats opposite to me, but I pay them no mind. My soul is far too tortured to think of how I might be perceived. As the train rumbles out of the capital, however, their idle chatter catches my attention. Their voices sound familiar. When I raise my head, it takes me a moment to recognize them. Sitting opposite me, dressed in civilian clothes, sit the two police officers. When they see me, they boom greetings and good cheer. Apparently, they are both seeing women in the capital and like to make the occasional trip together. With Carl missing, I don't go into the specifics of what my day entailed. I fear being somehow implicated in his disappearance. I don't mention the unknown, but they do. Man, I thought that masked creature you were talking about was just some elaborate prank or a weird metaphor, the one that likes to laugh says. But you were right, I saw the videos. That thing is terrifying. Poor kids. Poor kids, the stern one repeats. Things like that don't belong in our republic. If it was up to me, I'd shoot specters like that on sight. The thought takes a while to connect, but when it does, a weight is lifted off my shoulders. As the train drives back towards home and towards that old factory, I talk with the officers. I tell them my plan. Is your neighbor going through a divorce so devastating they've decided to learn the trombone? Trying to avoid a politically charged conversation with your Uber driver? Has silence become your worst enemy? Fear not, a podcast has come to your rescue. Tune in to the Cabinet of Fever Dreams on your podcast platform of choice and dive into the labyrinth of unsettling pulp horror. Let the bizarre and macabre sweep you away and say goodbye to the mundane and hello to the fantastically frightening. And now for the final chapter of the Unknown Saga. Due to misuse, I've been banned from posting any job offers on the country's leading job website. There's only 2 people I can hire for the event. Luckily, they both say yes. She's still willing to work for below minimum wage, but because the event is 18+, Catherine is not allowed inside of the factory. Instead, she spends the morning running around town putting up flyers advertising the rave. The advertisements are confusing, printed without color, and say the event starts at 5:30 in the afternoon. I don't expect the flyers to bring anyone to the factory. In fact, I hope they don't. The flyers merely exist to make this an official event. The man who was painted green for Children's Sci-Fi Saturday is less amicable on the phone. At first, he furiously declines my offer to work. The ex-convict even threatens to fine me and beat me over the work papers that I never filled out. When I promise him the documents and suggest that his presence at the rave could count towards his community service hours, however, he relents. While Catherine runs around town advertising the rave, the ex-convict helps me run security. He shows up wearing a dirty bomber jacket and has a terrible attitude. When I give him a baseball bat, he handles the tool with reverence. He's worked security before, he says. If anyone steps out of line, he'll take care of them, he says. I don't tell either of them my true plan. I don't tell them because I fear if they knew I was trying to defeat the unknown, neither of them would be willing to help. The plan, even to me, seems to be hinging on unsure presumptions, yet one cannot expect order when facing the incomprehensible. The doubts about whether the unknown would show up again died down while Carl's people set up the lights the night prior. All I could do was play the role of an event organizer trying to redeem his reputation. As I do my first patrol through the factory with the ex-convict, however, the doubts come back. What if the unknown doesn't show until late in the night? What if it doesn't show at all? Can the unknown even be defeated through physical force? All of these questions fester in the back of my skull, feeding off of my sleeplessness and stress. The thought that I'll meet the same fate as Karel starts to turn into a certainty, yet before the panic can fully seize me, I'm brought back into reality by the man in a dirty bomber jacket. 5:30's too early, he says, eyeing the light fixtures with disgust. No one's gonna show. Let's work for you then, right? I smile. He doesn't. The man clears his throat, spits some phlegm into a dark corner, and then continues on his patrol toward the loading dock. I'm about to follow him, but then the main factory door creaks open behind me. A familiar set of innocent eyes peek through. I've given out all the flyers, Catherine says, hovering on the edge of the premises she's not allowed to enter. Met some peeps outside of the mall that seemed really excited. You handed out all the flyers? It's 5:35. I expected Catherine to be out promoting until 7 at least. The thought of people showing up early chills my blood. The plan to defeat the unknown does not allow for random civilians to be in the factory. Yeah, she says, smiling. I gave a stack of them to some people at the train station who said they were looking for something to do tonight. The folks at the mall took a couple too. Said they would tell their friends. I peek out of the factory. There are no other visitors yet, just Catherine. Yet my imagination starts to paint crowds. One piece of feedback though, she says, her face twisting into a momentary show of disappointment before springing back towards the standard joy. They said that 5:30 is too early for a rave. Also said you'd probably attract more people with colored flyers. My pulse calms. 5:30 is, indeed, too early. Hopefully the interested parties will stick to their ideals and stay away until sunset at least. Good job, Catherine. As you know, you're not allowed at the actual event, but there's a box of wristbands somewhere that I will need you to... You prick! The rough voice bounces around the old factory like settling thunder. You said the thing wouldn't be here! You promised! Balancing a tightrope between rage and fear, the ex-convict backs out of the loading dock. He grips the baseball bat like a warrior, and for a moment I fear that he will strike me down. Yet aluminum quickly comes clattering to the floor. The thing is right behind him. Crawling like a four-legged spider, the unknown emerges from the passageway. I'd hoped the man would help me fight the creature, but my hopes were misplaced. As he backs away from the unknown, the ex-convict yells obscenities at me, yet he faces the creature as if it were a wild bear. The fear in his eyes drives the being to start crawling faster. It nearly has its eldritch talons on him when suddenly its attention shifts. A piercing scream sounds off right by my ear. I did my best to block Catherine's view of the factory floor, but my best was not enough. The shock of the creature's mere presence sends her into panic. When a terrible thing cranes its neck to look at us, it sends her running. The ex-convict uses this momentary distraction to make his escape as well. He runs at the factory door, shoving me in the process. I make no attempts to stop him. I had hopes that he would help me slow down the creature, but this isn't his fight. I grip my bat and walk onto the factory floor. The unknown shrinks its neck back in surprise. It doesn't expect resistance. As if the specter was a confused animal, the mask of metal cocks to the side. The thing watches me, unsure of how to react, but it quickly makes a decision. With renewed speed, the unknown crawls towards me. A chorus of whispers sounds off beneath the mask. Their combined hiss terrifies me, but I bite past my fear. With all the spirit I can muster, I grip my baseball bat. I strike true. The aluminum meets the mask with an audible bonk and sends the creature scurrying away. The The thing looks almost pitiful in its retreat, and my heart soars with pride at having defeated it. The celebration is deeply misplaced. The unknown quickly turns to face me once more. The beast rushes at me again, yet there's fury in its movements now. With each step it takes, the cloak that contains its limbs grows higher and more jagged. By the time the unknown faces me once more, it's nearly twice my size. My second strike does nothing to the creature. It simply blocks its talons from cutting into my shoulders. I'm left holding off the beast with the bat, yet with each passing second, the hidden mass of flesh grows heavier. We crash to the ground. With my remaining strength, I still manage to press the creature off of me, yet my efforts are irrelevant. The unknown's neck squirms past my arms and places the mask against my ear. The whispering chorus speaks to me once more. The sensation is terrible. The dozens of mouths speak in a foreign tongue, yet I understand each and every word. They articulate truths which no sober or sane mind can hope to put into speech. The chorus of mouths speaks to me, and its terrible hiss blasts away any other form of perception. I'm utterly lost in a demon's communication, but then, in a volley of gunfire, I am saved. The blasts cut through the hiss and send me crashing back into reality. They are numerous and come in quick succession. It isn't until the patrolmen have emptied out both of their clips that they stop shooting. They stand in the factory doors, dressed as civilians, wisps of smoke still leaking from their handguns. Next to me, the creature lies defeated. The cloak which contained its massive body lies crumpled on the floor. The massive neck is gone, and the mask seems like nothing more than refined scrap. As I look at the remnants of the creature, the coat starts to shrink like a piece of plastic eaten away by heat. The mask, too, seems to fizz away into the ether. When the two cops see the creature's form start to dissipate, they celebrate. They holler and high-five, and the good-humored one starts to scream boasts about defeating demons. But something feels off. The creature crumbles away in front of me, but faintly. I still hear its whispers. The gunshots were but a momentary pop and a steady eldritch hiss. At every passing second, the terrible chorus drives my body into shivering madness. I lift myself up with the aid of the baseball bat and try to make sense of reality. The policemen are celebrating, but there's still something at the loading dock. I try to get their attention, but they are far too caught up in the revelry. Alone, I make my way through the passage to the loading dock. As I hobble with my bat, the whispers grow louder and angrier. Quickly, their source becomes apparent. At the far side of the dock, rested against one of the shuttered doors, sits the unknown's mirror. It has shed its funhouse quality and reflects as a normal mirror should. Across the hall, I catch my own reflection, yet the closer I move towards the mirror, the clearer it becomes I am not alone. Behind me, gaining at a steady stride, moves the terrible specter. Its limbs are raised and it's larger than ever. Yet it is the creature's face that drives terror into my heart and panic into my steps. The mask is gone. A terrible mass of lips and teeth embedded in sickly flesh chatters in its place. I run towards the mirror, hoping to smash it with the bat and bring this whole terrible affair to an end. I push my drained body to its brink, trying to move quickly. Yet the unknown moves quicker. Its dark cloak descends on me meters away from the mirror. I cannot reach. The best I can do is throw the bat like a javelin at the horrid expression. Before the aluminum fully leaves my hand, I am plunged into a world of darkness. It is all so brief, but the moment burrows itself into my heart and skin. I am in some shadowy realm where the air is filled with the stench of sulfur. Off in the distance, I see the faint outlines of jagged mountains, yet the topography of the nightmare quickly becomes irrelevant. My skin burns. My face, my neck, my hands. Any shred of exposed flesh is assailed by a terrible sizzling pain that grips my body in agony. The burn is excruciating. I am certain that death is near and that my only hope is that it arrives quickly. The pain strips away all notion of cogent thought and drives me to my knees, but then, just as I feel my consciousness beginning to let go, I hear the sound of glass shattering. My hands and face continue to burn as I find myself lying on the loading dock floor, but the pain is manageable. A mere inconvenience compared to the suffering of the unknown's grip. Beyond my aching body lie the remnants of the broken mirror. The two patrolmen come in to investigate the crash. For a moment, they pause their celebration to ask me if I am okay. I do not answer them until I pick up a shard of broken glass. Breathlessly, I study my own reflection. I'm okay, I finally say. My skin is blood red with irritation, and my facial hair is coarse and burnt. I look like I've been a victim of a chemical weapons attack, but it's not my looks that I'm worried about. Past my herald reflection, nothing moves. There is nothing following me. It's over, I say. We defeated the unknown. My declaration of victory sends the younger patrolman into another fit of whooping and hollering, yet his sterner partner keeps his composure. He gets me a rag and a bottle of water and suggests I seek immediate medical attention. I consider his suggestion, but as I do, a trio of partygoers enter the loading dock. They ask about the rave. They ask where the music is. I assure them that they are in the right place and take their entry fee. When they see my face in a clear light, it looks like they might reconsider. The presence of the two strange men with guns doesn't make them any calmer. A round of free beers and the sheer strength of the sound system, however, chills them out. It's far too early for a rave, but groups of partygoers slowly trickle in. Without Catherine and the ex-convict, I have no staff to help me, but the patrolmen happily lend a hand. The stern old-timer mans the door and handles payment and the wristbands, while the one with good humor stocks the warehouse for troublemakers and occasionally fiddles with the sound system. As I tend the makeshift bar, many of the attendees inquire about my health. They say I look unwell, as if I need to go to the hospital, but I shrug their concerns off. I just have some allergies, I say, managing a very painful smile. They always flare up around spring. Early on, people show a lot of concern, but as the night goes on, they stop asking questions and focus on the party. Around midnight, a noise complaint comes in, but my patrolman friends send their colleagues away. It's just a party, they say. This guy's cool. Local authorities take this as a reasonable excuse. My email is no less full of complaints and threats, but seeing the factory come to life with music and dance and lights soothes my soul. I am still facing countless lawsuits and my reputation is forever ruined, but those are problems better considered in daylight. I still take occasional glances at the mirror, assuring myself that there is no foreign force reflected in it. There isn't. The unknown has been defeated and I am free of its curse. As I stand behind the makeshift bar, worries about my future do occasionally bubble up, but I don't dwell on them. I just watch the strobe lights shift through the factory as I recall memories of my long-gone youth.
Sup ghouls, it's me, Mike, the guy who writes these stories. Thank you for listening to this little collection of tales. If you haven't yet, please do like the video, and if you've made it this far, please scream
Willy Wonka
in the comment section so that algo blesses this video. The time of the new United People series is almost upon us. As you listen to this, the first 5 episodes are already available on patreon.com/MikeJLanger. There's still a bit of editing and quality checks to be done, but come June 4th, the stories will start releasing twice a week on this channel. Next Thursday, you guys will get a compilation of all the ancient Neon Man stories, and the Thursday after that, you'll get a big compilation video of the previous United People series to catch everyone up. Thank you for your patience with the compilation videos and the new series. As I tend to mention, I'm very overworked right now, but that's just because I'm trying to set up a comfortable nest egg so I can fully commit myself to writing through the winter. Real excited to see what y'all think of the new series. Hope everyone is safe, sane, and healthy out there. See y'all next week.